Okay, good evening everybody, and to the viewers at home and listeners at home. Welcome to Rugby Brough Council's Audit and Ethics Committee meeting this evening. I'm Chris Green, Vice Chair of the committee. The meeting is being web streamed to the public through the Council's YouTube channel. During the meeting, when asked to speak, please use the push to talk button on the microphone in front of you. This will allow the camera to pan in on your general direction and everyone to hear you. Before we begin the formal agenda, I'm obliged to read out the following fire notice. There is no fire drill scheduled in the building this evening. If the fire alarm does sound, then please could I ask that you make your way out of the building, down the main staircase and out of the main doors of the Town Hall and congregate at the entrance to Caldecott Park. An officer of the council will give instructions on when it is safe to return to the building. So, moving on to the agenda, the first item of business is to approve the minutes of the meeting held on the 24th of November 2025. And are councillors happy to do that, please? Thank you. So I'll just sign those. Now, the second item is apologies for absence. Do we have any apologies for absence from Democratic Services?
Thank you, Chair. We have apologies for absence from Councillors Howling and Karadia.
Thank you. And then item 3, declarations of interest. As to receive declarations of interest as defined by the Council's Code of Conduct for councillors. A, non-pecuniary interests. None. B, pecuniary interests. None. And C, notice under section 106 of the Local Government Finance Act 1992, non-payment of community charge or council tax. None. Okay, good. Moving on to item 4, the audited statements of accounts. We have representatives from Audit here and Jean. I don't know whether you want to start and then we'll move over to Audit. Yep, okay, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. The committee back in September gave delegation to the Chair of the committee to sign if there were no material changes to the pre-audit accounts. However, given the subsequent number of amendments, we've agreed that it is best not to use that delegation and to come back formally to the committee to reapprove the accounts as they now stand. Appendix B to the report highlights the changes that have been made, as does the auditor's report in Appendix A as well. Just for your information, the main changes are, firstly, the collection fund. We had an external firm look at how we had closed that part of the accounts, and that plus our subsequent checks on balances held led to an identification of 326,000 that could be appropriated into usable reserves, as well as movements between unusable reserves, creditors, debtors and provisions. Several treasury items then were found to be miscoded between cash and cash equivalents and between short and long-term classifications. While this has no impact on reserves, there were some significant sums involved moving between different lines in the balance sheet. Finally, a couple of property valuations that are a little bit unusual, unique to Rugby, were processed for the total valuation figure when they should have been adjusted to lower amounts. So that again impacts on balance sheet and on the income shown in the comprehensive income and expenditure statement, but not on usable reserves, only on unusable reserves. There have been various other small amendments to the accounts. And I must just make you aware that since the report was published last week, we've made 3 minor changes to figures in tables and have added a footnote to one note, but that is all in reference to 23-24 comparators. An addendum showing those changes has been circulated. So the auditor's updated findings report is attached as Appendix A to the report, and I'll stop talking and hand over to them.
Thanks, Jean. So, as Jean has said, there have been a number of amendments to the financial statements as presented in draft on the website. In total, that has led to six audit adjustments, some of which are material, and there does remain one unadjusted finding, which amounts to 195,000. That hasn't been adjusted by management on the basis that it isn't material to the financial statements. But overall, the audit is now complete. We're doing our final kind of bits of sign off on the audit file, but we are in a position, if the accounts are approved today, to sign the accounts from our side tomorrow. So that's positive. Overall, from the draft accounts that you would have seen presented, there has been a £32,000 difference to the total comprehensive income and expenditure, which is trivial to us. So even though there has been significant adjustments to the financial statements, that's mainly to do with the balance sheet, the movement in reserves and the cash flow. As Jean did note, there has been changes to the 23-24 financial statements, and there is a prior period adjustment included within the accounts now. There is also note 40, which details this change, and it splits into two main classifications. The first being that the council this year has amended the way that it produces its cash flow statement, and to ensure comparability with the prior year, that has been similarly changed in the prior year. And what that led to, though, is identifying that there were errors in the prior year cash flow statement. So they have been corrected for, and they're detailed within the accounts. And the other prior period adjustment that is noted is in relation to grants received in advance, which previously had all been shown as long-term, but have now accurately been split out on the balance sheet between short-term and long-term. If we look back to our audit plan, which we presented in April last year, we set out, I believe, three significant risks and one other risk. So the first of that was management override of controls. We haven't identified anything that would indicate management are overriding the controls within the council, which is positive, but we have made some best practice recommendations. In terms of the valuation of land and buildings and council dwellings, as Jean has said, there were a couple of assets that were not put through correctly, and that's led to a decrease in the value of land and buildings of around 1.9 million, and a small increase to the value of your council dwellings. This is the main area of recommendation from external audit, is the way that the council is compiling its fixed asset register and how that links through to revaluation movements. So we did raise recommendations on this last year, and I know the council are working to address this, but this would be kind of my biggest area of concern throughout the audit. In terms of our value for money assessment, we already presented on that at the last time we took this report, but just for completeness, we haven't identified any significant weaknesses in the council's arrangements to achieve value for money. I'm happy to take any questions on any of the adjustments or any of the findings within the report, or more generally towards external audit. I don't have any other comments.
Okay, thank you, Laura. Thank you, Jean. I'm just going to open up now to questions. Any questions or comments for Laura and or Jean?
Hello. Yeah, it's just one I think we started on 12 months ago, really, which was council house dwellings and the valuations. I still note within the report and the audit approach that there's still some sort of issues around that, really, and we haven't really bottomed that. I know Bruton Knowles, according to the commentary, have been in and out and this, that and the other, but it still seems to be some weaknesses around that particular area, really. I don't know whether that's a fair comment and that we should be taking that back, I suppose, in-house some way and trying to bottom that out. I mean, is it purely the fact, I think you put some years down here, different different times, which, and I know we used a different valuer, and now Bruton Knowles is a new valuer. Is it just purely down to that timing, would you say?
So yes, last year, I think if we recall, the valuer was quite delayed in providing the valuation report, which did lead to significant delays with the audit work progressing. That hasn't been the case this year. The valuer did provide the reports on time, and actually, from our experience, were of good quality, and they were able to answer our questions as we needed them to. So we haven't had any concerns with the council's external valuer. I think our main concern, whilst we are satisfied all of the adjustments have been processed correctly, it is in the fixed asset register that the council holds. So that is, the council will hold a log or a register of every asset that the council owns or has the right to use, and how those movements are tracked, whether it be through depreciation, revaluation movements, impairment. That's where we've had difficulties tying that or reconciling that through to the accounts and through to the valuation reports. So yeah, I'd just be mindful that we didn't have any concerns with the valuer externally to the council.
Thank you. I think John wants to speak on this as well.
Yeah, thank you. And another thing that we're going to do to address these recommendations is that I've already spoken to Martin from a corporate assurance point of view, and we're going to get a piece of consultancy work undertaken by internal audit to review the recommendations that came out of this year's audit, and undertake a review to make sure that we are looking at those in good time to make sure that they don't get picked up again. So we had that conversation, and hopefully what we'll then do is bring a report back to this committee way before the end of the process to give you an update on that. So we'll maybe just speak behind the scenes about the timing of when that report can land, because we don't want to do it too late and it gets caught up in the overall audit process. I think the other thing is we've got a bit more stability now in the team. So we've got, whereas for 23-24 we had interims doing a lot of the accounts, 24-25 we had permanent people that have only just come into the role. So I think just through the nature of having that stability with permanent officers in place as well will make a big difference for this year's process.
Thanks, John. Any more questions?
So, from what I'm hearing, it's about capacity and skills, really. Is that been the particular issue around this in relation to the work that's going on that, and having, I don't know, I presume we've got the right software. Who knows with software these days? Here today, gone tomorrow. But is that my sort of part reading of it, and you're going to bring a report back to us about it for another audit?
I think in the past there may have been capacity issues. I think for 24-25 it's just experience of the team, and there's the crossover between a change in approach. But yeah, all the lead accountants now are permanent members of the staff, so I don't necessarily think it's going to be capacity. It's just making sure that we act on the recommendations that assets have presented to us in a timely way, and that's where through me in my role, but also Martin doing a consultancy piece from internal audit, we'll just make sure we're on top of it, so we're not coming to this process in September, fingers crossed if it all goes according to plan, with these things still being a recorded issue.
And if I might add to that, John, there are changes coming as well for the way that the council can revalue its other land and buildings for this 25-26 period. So I think it is probably a good time for the council to take that on board in line with the changes that are coming as well in the future, and that may make things easier for the council to like apply indices to valuation movements, for example, is one of the changes that the council has an option to use.
So, it's like for this afternoon, local government reform. So that's where everybody's getting together and doing different work streams across Warwickshire on different stuff. So I'm probably looking more at John in relation. So in relation to this council, it would be a good thing to revalue everything as soon as possible, would it not? Or as quickly as possible before all the controls and lockdowns between next year, really, or something. I don't know. I mean, it may, because all those values. We were talking about how the budget's going to be done next year, and then the following year for you know, the shadow authority, and then everybody else and the county as well at the same time. So the values, when everything's brought together, whether it's 2, 3, 1, whatever, is going to be quite interesting. So presumably we'd want the most up-to-date assets that we could really. Is that a particular work stream that we've got going now?
I'm just thinking, looking at what I've got written from the other item I'm going to talk to. Well, actually, literally, that's what my commentary says on that. So we'll come back to it because there is a change to the accounting policies and.
Thanks, Jean. If there are no further questions or comments, I'll just I've got one question and comment in relation to the external auditors report. I just wanted to say a big well done to the finance and performance team. Jean, I saw you were mentioned in the report as having provided exemplary accessibility, so well done. But also Gemma and David and John and the rest of the team. This is one of a very small number of councils that's actually got its accounts not just up to date and published up to date, but actually audited fully up to date as well. So a big well done for that. I did notice that there was some additional fees, just under £25,000. But I believe was linked to the volume and magnitude of the identified errors. Could you just elaborate a bit on that, Laura, in terms of why we've got that additional 25,000? Thank you.
Yes, that's fine. The first additional fee was in relation to IFRS 16, which is a technical term, but it actually relates to a change in accounting standards relating to leases. So this was always something that we expected to be additional fee because public sector audit appointments doesn't build in, it couldn't have built in IFRS 16 at the point that we were awarded the contract. So the council has a number of leases that it has the right to use, but actually they are not material to the financial statements. So the work that was involved is us firstly understanding how the council is applying the new accounting standard and ensuring that they've gone through the right procedures to make sure their identification of the leases were complete. So that was the first element of the additional fee. The second element of the additional fee related to the two prior period adjustments that I noted, the main one being the restatement of the cash flow statement. So where a restatement does take place, we do have an obligation to effectively re-audit the prior year figures. And the main one was the quality and preparation issues that we've identified throughout the audit. The main 2 points, I think, being the collection fund, which was significantly delayed, and as Jean said, the council rightly needed to go and procure external support to make sure that had been done correctly. But unfortunately, what that did mean is that for us as external audit, we had to basically bring a team back to do the work once it was available for us. So that has led to additional costs. And equally with the adjustments that have been identified from the revaluation of the council dwellings and the other land and buildings, has taken quite a lot of senior time within the team. So that has been done at an associate director level within our firm, given the challenges. So hopefully that gives some context, but I'm happy to take further questions if you've got any.
Okay, Thank you, Laura. I think we just note that. Thanks very much. Okay. Any further questions or comments on this? No? Okay, so we are being asked to, first of all, note the audit findings and report. Are we happy to do that? Yeah. Secondly, to approve and sign the letter of representation. Do we need to vote on this?
Do all in one go at the end.
Yeah. Secondly, yes, so to approve and sign the letter of representation, and thirdly, to approve and sign the statements of accounts. Are members happy for us to do that? Yeah, that's great. Thank you very much. Okay. Do we do it after the meeting? Do we actually? Yeah. Okay, thank you everyone. Right, we'll move on to item 5, which is the Treasury Management Half-Yearly Report. And I understand Gemma's going to present on this one. Gemma, over to you.
Thank you, Chair. This report presents the Treasury Management Mid-Year Update for 25-26. It covers the period from 1st of April to 30th of September 2025. The report fulfils our statutory requirement under the SITFA Treasury Management Code, and members are asked to note the report and recommend it to full council for approval. During the first half of the year, Treasury activity has remained fully compliant with the approved strategy and all prudential indicators. There have been no breaches of borrowing limits or counterparty limits. In summary, the Council has remained fully compliant with its Treasury limits, liquidity remains strong, no unnecessary borrowing has taken place, investment returns are above benchmark and above budget, and overall Treasury management performance for the first half of the year remains prudent and well controlled. Thank you, Chair, and we'll be happy to take any questions.
John, you'd like to come in?
Just to also mention, yes, this might seem like a late report, but it's the first meeting of Audit and Ethics Committee that was, it was the first one we could get it to. So, yeah, apologies for the lateness, but it's just the way that the committee timetables work for us this time around.
Thanks, John. Okay, do we have any questions or comments on this item? Okay, thank you. So members are asked to note the report and also to recommend to full council that the report be approved. Are we happy to do that? Yeah. Okay, thank you. Right. Moving on to item 6, which is the 2026-27 Capital and Treasury Management Strategy incorporating the annual investment strategy. Gemma, is it you again?
Thank you, Chair. This report includes Treasury Management Strategy and the Capital Strategy for 26-27 financial year. There are 4 recommendations to Council relating to approval of the Treasury Management Strategy, Capital Strategy, prudential indicators including the authorised limit and operational boundary, and the MRP policy. The strategies are required to be produced and prepared on an annual basis in accordance with the SITFA Prudential and Treasury Management Code, and demonstrate that the Council's capital and treasury activities remain prudent, affordable and sustainable. If we talk about the Treasury Management Strategy first, the main aim of the strategy is to ensure liquidity to meet day-to-day commitments and longer-term capital obligations while managing risk appropriately. External borrowing currently stands at 82.3 million, with £1 million of maturing debt repaid during the year. The Council remains in an under-borrowed position, meaning we use internal cash balances before taking external borrowing. No new borrowing is planned for 26-27. The members are asked to approve the prudential indicators for 26-27, including an operational boundary of 140 million and an authorised limit of 150 million for external debt. This has reduced by 50 million from 25-26 based on an assessment of potential need and risk exposure based on the latest capital financing requirements. The strategy continues to prioritise security, liquidity and yield in that order and includes the updated MRP policy. Turning to the capital strategy. This strategy aligns capital investment with the corporate strategy and medium-term financial plan. Total capital expenditure for 26-27 is forecast at 21.1 million, with the capital financing requirement projected at 113.4 million. There is a straightened emphasis this year on town centre regeneration. As members are aware, town centres nationally are facing structural change. The strategy recognises the need for proactive public sector leadership, including strategic asset intervention where justified, to safeguard long-term economic vitality. Key sites such as Rugby Central Shopping Centre and Brotherhood House are identified as strategic priorities because of their potential to drive wider regeneration. However, any intervention will be subject to rigorous business case approval, best value considerations, affordability testing and full governance processes. Overall, the report provides assurance that the Council's capital investment and treasury management arrangements are sound, well-governed and financially sustainable. Thank you, Chair, and we'll be happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Gemma. Any questions for Gemma?
I suppose I'm just seeking assurances because we are, with the town centre stuff, can we increase that as we go through this financial year? I suppose it's more a question to John, really, around if we have to go down particular directions with particular buildings and the rest of it to sort of accelerate that process. I mean, I'm taking it from this, we've got flexibility to do that. So I'm just seeking that assurance that you're comfortable as the Chief Finance Officer around some of the figures that we may be progressing going forward, really.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Rogers. Yeah, the strategy sets the original boundaries that we're working to, but the realities are it can be flexed. It would have to be a decision through to Cabinet and Council, but I think what we've got in that strategy is enough flexibility to be able to progress quite a lot of capital expenditure. I think the area where we might we do need to be mindful is the structural changes in the Section 24 direction, because at that point we won't be able to proceed anything else until the new shadow authority. So I think, in answer to the question, it can be changed if need be. We'd have to take it through to Cabinet and Council, but I think the strategy does give us what we're looking for to move things forward.
Okay, thanks, John. You've answered my question as well there. Any more questions or comments? Okay, right. So we've been asked to recommend to Council that the capital strategy and programme be approved, that the Treasury Management Strategy and Annual Investment Strategy are approved, the prudential indicators are approved, and the minimum revenue provision policy also be approved. Are we happy to do that? Yeah, great. Okay, lovely. Right, thank you, Gemma. Moving on to item... Oops. Just bear with me, just having... Go and make a drink, everyone at home. The Accounting Policies Update 2025-26. Jean, is that you?
Thank you, Chair. As outlined in the accompanying report, there is one change from the previous year. The policies other than that are as they were approved last year. And we've already partially covered that. So it is the requirement to index the value of properties not revalued in a year, and for a full desktop review to be conducted at year 3 if there is no suitable index for a particular property type. It enforces the need to revalue all assets at least once every 5 years, so a proper rolling programme. The policy, as we've now got it worded, allows for a return to a 5-year rolling programme in the future. At the moment, all properties are currently being revalued by Bruton Knowles for this year end, and the expectation is that we will probably return to a rolling programme using the indexation from 27-28, potentially looking to align our rolling programme with other Warwickshire local authorities in the run-up to local government review, so that when we set that programme, the asset classes that we're planning to revalue in a year align to other councils. So, for example, all leisure centres would be revalued at the same time, that sort of thing. So for the moment, we've amended the policy in line with the change, and we're looking to the future with it as well. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Jean. Any questions or comments for Jean? Lovely. Right, we're asked to, for this one, to approve the accounting policies for 2025-26. Are we happy to do that? Okay, lovely. Thank you. Right, thanks, Jean. Moving on to item 8, the risk management strategy 2026-27. Are you presenting, John, or is...
I'll start it off and then
Yeah.
pass the colleagues at RSM.
Okay, over to you.
Thank you, Chair. And just to take people back to September, we brought a paper to the committee outlining a new way of working, a new partnership with RSM around all things risk management. This meeting is the first opportunity to bring to the committee the fruits of the labour that have been taking place since that time. So the first item on the agenda is the risk management strategy, and perhaps I'll pass over then to John and Matt to kind of lead us into it.
Yeah, thanks, John. I'll take that in that case. Yeah, so this is risk management policy statement and strategy. It's pretty straightforward with regards to what it says. It provides you with an overview of risk management, then the way in which risk management will be adopted and approached within the council, followed by the way it will be applied. And the words largely say it all. What I will say is that the risk management policy statement and strategy is actually based on best practice. We obviously work with a range of local government organisations and other public sector bodies, so we draw on our sort of cumulative knowledge and experience to put that policy and strategy together. There is also an appendix, which is the risk management framework key components. They're the more fluid items that we might want to keep under review, the ways in which we score risk, the ways in which we apply a risk appetite, and they're the sort of things that change more regularly, probably in year, in some instances, more so than the policy and strategy itself, which will probably be subject to review maybe every year, but the items in between that, the scoring, that we'll keep under review more regularly just to make sure they're relevant to the council and the way they want to go about it. I'm prepared to answer any questions on the risk management policy statement strategy as it stands, and if I can't answer, I'll get back to you.
Thank you, Matt. Any questions, comments for Matt?
Keep forgetting about that. So, I suppose one of the things about this is discussions take place within organisations at a whole host of different levels about different things and about different decisions. And they never sometimes, though there's a risk to it, they never appear onto the risk register. So giving assurance to the Cabinet corporately, not individual portfolio holders. So a portfolio holder might have been involved in a discussion with chief officers about something, and then it doesn't really appear on the corporate risk register to give the corporate assurance back to them, if you follow my meaning. What stick or guns or what ammunition are we using within the document to actually ensure that takes place? Because I can think of probably 2 or 3 conversations which are fairly live at the moment, and without me being a bit sad and sitting down at 10 o'clock tonight and going through the complete risk register, I wonder whether some of them would actually arrive within that risk register in a timely position, really, because some of this is all about timeliness and it's difficult to match it into cycles. But I suppose I'm sitting in the position here as on this committee. How do I know that what I'm seeing, I can then give assurance back to the Cabinet corporately and the leader, sort of say, yeah, that we think that's pretty good actually. So why did you have that secret meeting, you know, down the road with a complete bunch of other local authorities and whatever else? But I didn't see it here, but I knew it took place. If you follow my meaning.
In answer to the question, Councillor Rood, I suppose the risk register that we present, so the policy as part of this is a point in time. Certainly the register, which is, the risk register, which I identified 9, that's what it was at that point in time. But to give you some assurances, so each month the leadership team has a strategic board. Risk management is on that agenda item, and we have Matt and John attending those sessions. We also have a quarterly dedicated risk management session as well to pick up things in a bit more detail. And I think we are using the language now, or really being the risk register is a fluid document, and I think we are having conversations, the leadership team, and as part of that process, things being fed back to John and Matt. What we're also looking to understand is how can we be really agile and have a shared live document that we can both have access to. So what we're trialling is a Teams group with the risk register built into it, and so then again everyone's got access to that document at the same time. So yeah, I can't comment whether that works or not, because that's still quite live, but we are doing that. So hopefully through monthly conversations that picked up. The other thing to highlight is that on every week the Golden Triangle Chief Exec, Monitoring Officer and 151 have conversations, and again risk is part of that, and if something needs to then flow through to leadership team or through to the risk register, it will. And maybe as part of this, we know that strategic risk will come to Audit and Ethics Committee every meeting. That's every quarter, isn't it? Every 3 months or so. We have our monthly leadership team cabinet informal briefing. Maybe what we also need to do is give you visibility of the risk register through that as well.
Okay, thanks, John. Any more questions or comments?
And I think now subject to this being the policy being adopted, strategy being adopted, now we've got a risk register that is in operation. I think that will definitely start to happen, and that's where we'll use colleagues at RSM, because they know what you've got enough examples of best practice for us to copy. Let's be honest, and embed it into the way we do things here.
Okay, thanks, John.
Sorry, Chair. I was just going to say, Councillor Roodhouse, that obviously there's a separate paper coming up on the strategic risk register itself, which goes into a little bit more detail, which John is going to deal with. So, just to sort of recap on the policy statement strategy, it's there to just set a framework within which we can work and the way in which we can then apply risk management practices. But John's going to take you through the strategic risk register itself so you can become more familiar with that. And as John has very well articulated also, the fact that this strategic risk register will be coming to the Audit and Ethics Committee on a more regular basis. And I think actually as the risk management arrangements that have been developed start to seep their way into the council and become embedded, you'll start to see, as John's identified already, risk is being talked about more regularly. Martin, through the work through CMAP and internal audit, talk about risk more regularly, and we'll be tying those items together. So, John, you're going to take the next paper anyway, aren't you, and talk through the strategic risk register.
Thank you, Matt. I've got a few questions as well, if that's okay. The mention of the risk maturity assessment taking place down the line, I just wondered whether it might be worth having one carried out now, so that actually the council has a baseline, and then next year you can review it again and you get another rating. So straight away you start to get that direction of travel. Is that something we can organise?
Looks like there's nods from this side and nods from that side, so if the committee are happy with that, yeah.
Great. And there's mention of member of an officer training, so as you rightly say, embedding it is obviously key. So when do you plan to do that, and who would you put through the training?
I think initially we're trying to get a session with Cabinet, and then we'll start to have more wider conversations about that. So I know that's something that I'm liaising with portfolio holders in already, and then we can take it from there.
Okay. Thanks, John. And thirdly, there's mention of deep dives from this committee, which I think would be a good idea. And there are comments in external audits report about cyber security, and cyber security is, you know, it's right up at the top in terms of risk profile across the whole country. So I was going to suggest that we could, at some point during this year, schedule a deep dive on cyber security. It would probably need to be a private session given the nature of the subject matter. But perhaps if we could get the relevant chief officer to come in and give us a bit of a, you know, presentation about how the risk is being managed in a bit more detail, and have a sort of Q&A session on that. Is that something that we'd be happy to do?
Thank you, Chair. Happy to do that. But with the impending announcement of the directors, the change in the leadership, we might need to get the directors in place first. Right. Oh, you wouldn't know that. No. And then maybe we need to decide, is it the director that attends or is it the assistant director? But that announcement hasn't been made yet, so I can't comment. But yeah, we'll take it back and put it on the work programme.
Okay, thanks, John. So we'll get something scheduled in. Okay, I don't have any more questions anymore from anybody else. No? Okay, lovely. We are being asked to recommend to Council that the risk management strategy be approved. Are we happy to do that? Yeah, great. Okay, thank you. Thank you, Matt. Thank you, John. Moving on to item number 9, which is the new strategic risk register. John and John? John.
Thank you, Chair. And I think before I pass on to John, yeah, we've done quite a lot of work as a leadership team between kind of October, November on this new strategic risk register. I think what you'll see is it's a complete new document. There's far fewer but more strategic risks in there. And yeah, like we were saying before, pass on, it's not set in stone. It's an evolving document, and it will continue to develop as the months progress. So I'll pass on to John now.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, as John said, we've looked to sort of trim it down and make it more of a useful document, certainly for this committee and other audiences, really. And what we normally find amongst local authorities is that around a dozen risks is the manageable level of strategic risks, which has risks of the right import and being able to develop the right controls to manage those risks. And as you'll see, from that, at the moment, from the work that I've done with the senior management team, we've trimmed it down to 15 strategic risks, and there's a feeling that we might be able to sort of amalgamate a few of those as well to bring it down to a really manageable level. And they're based on the discussions that we had with the management team, and also based on our knowledge of local government across the UK, and also specifically in the sort of Warwickshire, Leicestershire area, because you all have similar problems. Surprise, surprise. So that's worked really well, and having identified those risks, we worked through with the team to identify what the existing controls are in place at the moment, and able to give a sort of feel for how likely those risks would occur and their impact. And what we're currently working through is trying to have some actions to try and reduce the residual risk for each of those risks, which has come through, down even further to match the appetite that the council has for each of those types of risk. But I suppose the key words here are keeping it fluid and dynamic. Risks change from day to day, and similarly, the organisation's appetite on risk will change from time to time. So we'll constantly keep that under review as well and refine that as we go. And I think your idea, Chair, of having a baseline for a risk maturity assessment is an excellent starting point, so that you can see how things are progressing. And to address your point, Councillor Woodhouse, about things perhaps escalating or coming in from a different angle, the framework allows for that. And we've also even now got a couple of examples where things that we would class as an operational risk or issue, we're having discussions about those, about whether they may increase in strategic importance on the next sort of turn of the handle, basically, to see. So that'll be a good test as to looking at how issues escalate from being an operational risk to a strategic risk. And over time, you might find that some of the other strategic risks fall off as well. But happy to take any questions on the risk register that we've put to you, which, as we say, is a position in time and a good starting point. Thank you, Chair.
John, any questions or comments for John?
Not a question, but I wanted to say it was a really clear report and so easy to read, so thank you for that. Appreciate that.
Considering the subject matter, I think that's really very good feedback to get. Okay, so I just got, let's see. It's the nature of the BCV's things, you tend to look at them and think, is there something missing, rather than is there something there that shouldn't be there. But one thing I did look and thought would be there that I didn't see, there's climate change in relation to emergency response and planning, but there isn't climate change in relation to the council delivering on its climate strategy. So has that risk been considered for inclusion?
Well, Chair, I think when we started and identified that as an area, we had both aspects of that, and we certainly can develop that over time. Not only the reactive response to climate change, but also sort of the net zero strategy, etc. But we didn't feel it would be two separate risks, more sort of two sides of the same coin.
That makes sense, thank you. And then a question on paragraph 4.2, where we talk about embedding operational risk management once we've got the kind of strategic risk management embedded. If we're only here for 2 more years, in that context, when do we plan to make a start, and what would happen in the meantime? Because I think there may be a risk that operational risk management drops off the radar a bit with the services.
If I take that answer, Chair, if that's okay. Yeah, I appreciate that. I think the embedding should be fairly smooth and rapid, because people will already be carrying out risk assessments or thinking about the operational issues and risk anyway, one hopes. And obviously what we wanted to do was get a look and feel of risk management and the approach to risk management before cascading it a little further down the organisation. But I think now that we know that people like yourselves in this committee are happy with that look and feel, we can maybe sort of put a foot on the gas in taking it down the organisation. Don't want to speak for John there, obviously, but
John, and then final question from me is around risk 8. Did we consider including food waste? Not sure where the council is in relation to implementing the food waste requirements, but is that worth considering?
Well, Chair, yep. When the risk came up, we knew that the whole simpler recycling initiative would be front and centre with the food waste and the additional streams of paper and card as well. So that is sort of within that. It may not be articulated specifically that food waste is there, but it is part of that move to 4 streams of waste and all the fun that will associate with that. Thank you.
Cheers, John. Thank you. Any more questions or comments, Jerry?
Yeah, I'm just all the town centre project work and everything else that's going on with that. Does that get wrapped up in the council transformation plans? So it's not a specific separate risk. You've just chucked it into all transformation plans. Is that everything that goes on?
Say it's chucked in, yeah. I think, yeah, that risk is the task of is incorporated in the transformation plans, yeah.
So that's the one to look at in the town centre working group, for instance.
Potentially, yeah.
Well, to make sure the risk is covered, because there's about 14 projects underneath that, isn't there? Is that right?
Thanks, Chair. Thanks, Councillor Roothouse. We do have a specific strategic risk around failure to implement and robust, effectively deliver regeneration of the town centre, risk 12, as well as the one that we're talking about, the council's transformation. So it is sort of being approached from 2 separate but linked angles. Do you think we should strengthen strategic risk 12 to make sure it includes all those town centre plans then, perhaps? I see. Yeah. We can certainly re-articulate the risk to make sure it covers all of those aspects, I think, yeah. Okay. Yeah.
That's the benefit. There's been a fluid and dynamic document, then we can just adapt it. Yeah, so. Yeah. Was part of those conversations as well.
Thank you. Any more questions or comments? No? Okay, lovely. Right, we're asked to note the strategic risk register and provide feedback. I think we've done that. So thank you, everybody. Thank you, John. Thank you, Matt. We'll move on to item 10, the internal audit progress report. Martin.
Yeah, I pressed it. I've already done it, Jean. On the ball. If we move on to page 166 of your papers, which is the audit dashboard, we'll start as usual with the plan progress chart on the top left there. You can see that fieldwork complete and complete, we've got about 53% of the plan already wound up there with respect to that. Moving around to the left a little bit, this 14% of the plan is in progression and actively progressing, which is about 2/3 either complete or active progression against the plan, which is a little bit behind where I would want to be this time of the year. However, as Rugby Brough Council are obviously a new client for CMAP this year, and we provided a revised plan back in September 25. I'm very pleased with 2/3 completion at this stage, bearing in mind this is the start of January, because the committee was deferred to a later date. So the plan is progressing, it is moving forward. There will be a few audits which will be brought forward in next year's audit plan, but that's nothing that causes me any concern. Moving across to the right, jobs completed in period. There's 3 jobs that we've completed which will be covered later on in this report. One of them has a limited assurance rating, one reasonable, and the third one was a consultancy piece of work which looked at the AGS. Tying in with the fact that we're only just starting to get a number of audits completed and over the line, you can see we've yet to receive a customer satisfaction questionnaire back. They have been sent out, they have been chased. We will be actively chasing again, and I can be pretty sure that there will be some back for the next committee that we have, where we bring a progress report. Recommendation movement, bottom left there, you can see we've made 23 recommendations and closed 23 recommendations in the period. They are different recommendations which have been made and closed, not the same ones. The 2 charts concerning recommendations to the side of that, recommendations open and recommendations overdue, you can see from the middle one there, the open recs. There's 8 with action due, 16 delayed action due, 44 delayed future action and 7 future action. I have had a discussion with the new vice chair of this committee about the number of recommendations, so we can sort of do an evaluation process there, and there is an appendix 2 to this which we'll cover when we get to that section of the report. I think the chair will probably want to talk through that himself when we get there. Moving on to page 177 in your papers, that gives you a brief indication of where we are with respect to the actual jobs in the plan. You can see if you look down the status column, a number of them are fieldwork complete, where the job fieldwork being undertaken, completed, and they're just in the draft review process before we're going out in draft. There's 2 jobs which have been deferred to the 26-27 audit plan, and there is an additional audit which has been added at the bottom there. Information on those is on, well, should be on the following page. I think it's 2 pages on page 169 in your papers. The project management audit, the idea behind that audit is it was due to look at Rugby Central, the project overall. The project isn't sufficiently progressed at this stage, so we've deferred that audit into the following year's plan, when hopefully there will be something to look at, or we can deal with that accordingly. Likewise, the housing rents and rent arrears audit, that's also been deferred. The service are presently in discussion with the regulator with respect to an emerging issue which they're actually dealing with there, we didn't believe it to be conducive to try and do our audit at the same time the actual regulator are in. Plus, we can obviously look at what the regulator's report are, and that can feed into the scope of that audit in due course. The third and final one is there has been an issue arisen with cash handling at the crematorium, so we've done an additional piece of work there on the crematorium safe and cash handling process, which is at-field work complete. We're just due to report back to the service. So again, we should be able to provide some feedback on that one at the next committee where there's a progress report. The 3 audits which have been completed are on page 170 of your papers. I won't go into them in detail. There is capability and disciplinary audit there. That's reasonable assurance rating. That's the usual executive summary dashboard which we would expect to bring to this committee for that particular one. The loan working audit, which is the next one, that's in the old format. So there's no chart available with respect to that one. And you can see it is quite a long-winded way of explaining it and providing the feedback to that one. That's the last one of those audits which will be coming through in the old style. All the new ones will be in the executive summary style, so they'll just be in that short, sharp, half a page to the point. There's also the consultancy piece of work on the AGS, the annual governance statement. What I'll say, when it's a consultancy piece of work, we do go into greater detail for the committee, just to show, obviously, the added value that we've brought to the authority. So we have recounted all of the areas that we've looked at and all of the suggestions which have been made to improve that process as a consultancy. Which then takes us into page 183, which is the recommendation tracking section. And I don't know if that would be a good opportunity for me to sort of ease off and let you raise Appendix 2 at that stage, Chair.
Thanks, Martin. Happy to do that. So members will see at pages 209 onwards as Appendix 2 with a proposal, firstly, that we take the low-risk actions off the report for follow-up purposes. And the reason for that is, particularly when you've got so many there on that report, what do you focus on? And what do we focus on this committee? Because really we need to focus on matters of most significance. And in the context of LGR, you know, staff are going to be pulled in all sorts of different directions over the next 2 years. Do we really want officers focused on implementing things like low risk actions arising from internal audit reviews? Obviously there is an element of risk involved with that, but it's low, so you can keep it under monitoring and review. And then in relation to the medium risk actions, you'll see there's a table there at paragraph 2.1. So I've been through all of those in Martin's report and made comments and a recommended course of action. The ones that are highlighted in green, which mostly relate to recently completed internal audit work, I've suggested they be left in because they relate to things like data protection. It's obviously a really important area of legislative compliance. Loan working, which is a recent audit. So one on sundry debts, fraud awareness training, and then some more on loan working. But having gone through all of the others, they'd been assessed at medium risk, but my view on looking at them, there were a few where I needed to get extracts from the actual audit report, but my view was that they were low risk rather than medium risk and therefore could be removed from the list. And that would mean that next time around you get a much more focused report in terms of what's outstanding and what's being actively followed up on.
With respect to that, I was in full agreement with what the Chair had actually done, the Vice Chair, when going through that report. I think a number of these recommendations are legacy recommendations which were in place when CMAP took over the management of the audit service here. I'm in full agreement with respect to the recommendation risk ratings. We wouldn't have necessarily rated them the same as that. I think the upshot of Appendix 2 is it's proposed that there'll be 19 recommendations which will remain, which are past the original action date, and 7 future actions, which takes it down to about 26 going forward. I think that's a lot more manageable. I think we've kept the key core recommendations in there that we need to monitor, the ones which relate to legislation, and relate to areas, not just best practice, but areas where it adds real value to the authority there. I think one thing I will say, for the potential 42 recommendations which we will no longer be following up with respect to this committee, they won't just be dropped. I do intend to write out to the respective chief officers and basically state that although the committee will not be formally following these up, management are at liberty to take whatever actions they believe required in order to mitigate the risks identified. They shouldn't just be forgotten. We won't be actively following them up and chasing them up because we believe our actions and time would be better spent elsewhere, and obviously reporting on the key areas for the committee. That pretty much concludes where I am with respect to my presentation of the report. If anyone's got any questions.
Thanks, Martin. Any questions or comments?
Let's hope so.
Just to say that it seems like a good idea to simplify it a little bit more. If it's more manageable for officers, then yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think everything was just being lost because there was just so much information there, and it isn't core or critical. We want to just focus on the key benefits.
Okay, thanks. I just want to make a point on data protection, because there is a delay of 3 years in implementing the actions, and obviously that's it's an area of, you know, basically you've got to do it. So I wondered if we could say that we want an update on that for the next committee. And I mean, we can consider whether we ask the relevant officers to come in, but perhaps first and foremost, if we could actually say that we have requested an update be brought to the next meeting, because 3 years, obviously, that's a long time, and it does suggest that it's potentially not being progressed.
Take the point, Chair, but I was thinking, should we consider, like say, inviting an officer there? Because if there are any questions from the committee, it might be that the officers around this table might not be best placed to provide the answers that you're looking for.
Yeah, I'd be happy with that. Is that something we can do? Yeah, great. The only other question I've got, so it's around delivery plan, great progress. So there's a couple of things. Do you want to defer any audits into next year? And secondly, how do you plan to involve this committee in developing the plan for 26-27?
There are a number of allocated audits, bearing in mind this report was actually put together, I think, on the 7th of January, the information relates to. All of those audits, with the exception of one, which have got allocated against them, have now actively commenced and they are moving forward. There is one audit, which is the responsive maintenance one, the housing repairs one, which the auditor hasn't been able to commence yet, and that's not likely to commence until sort of the end of March. So I think it probably would be a good idea to defer that one as well to the 26-27 audit plan, because otherwise we'd be starting it with absolutely no opportunity to conclude it in a reasonable time frame. And it isn't an area that I necessarily need for this year's opinion, because I've got lots of other audits of a similar ilk that I can obviously feed into that one. So yes, that would be a good idea. With respect to the audit planning process, I've drawn up the audit universe prior to, as soon as CMAP took over the audit in the Rugby Brough Council last year, we drew up a new audit universe, we drew up the document, we presented it to the committee, I think it was September last year, and we provided a revised audit plan looking at the key areas that we wanted to review. Moving into 26-27, we've still got that same model, that same process. The scores have been adjusted accordingly with management. I've sat down with John and we've identified which audits we believe would be the high-risk areas or the key audits to actually conduct in 26-27. Earlier today, I met with the Golden Triangle, so the Section 151 officer, the monitoring officer and the chief executive, and we went through that revised plan. He was happy with it. Everyone there was happy with it. I've sent an email off to them with all of the auditable areas that we're looking to cover within 26-27 to put some indicative quarters against them for which quarter we believe the audit should be undertaken in. I'm now proposing to meet with the Chair and Vice Chair to discuss that plan with them prior to the next Audit and Ethics Committee, and then the proposal is that we bring that revised plan to the committee at the end of March for formal approval.
Lovely, thanks Martin. Are we happy with the deferral of the audit, one audit into early 2026-27?
Service area. There was 2 audits which overlapped, and they were put back until later on in the year, and they've both commenced at pretty much the same time. The Chief Officer's also asked for another audit of a very similar area later on in next year's audit plan. So, yeah, it is. Yeah, it is essentially. Yes, yeah. There's a lot going on at the moment. So, yeah.
Excellent. So, on that basis, if there are no more questions, we're asked to consider progress against the plan and the status of open recommendations. I think we've done that. Yep. So, thank you, Martin. We'll move on to...
Could I just...
Yes?
Sorry, can I just clarify for the minutes? We're recommendation as stated, including the removal of the Vice Chair's recommendations of the removal, the deferment of the audit into next year.
Yeah.
And the arrangement or the invitation of a officer regarding data protection to the next meeting, if applicable.
Yeah.
Great.
Excellent. Okay, so moving on to agenda item 11, which is assets of community value policy. John? Another John, is it?
Yes, thank you, Chair. I was getting very excited when you were talking about John and John, because normally in the meetings I'm in, that's John Illingworth and myself, but I was quite relieved to bring another John into the meeting. Thank you, Chair. Assets of community value policy. I have drafted and I've brought to this committee for their review the policy that I want to take to Cabinet so that Rugby Brough Council can have a policy to deal with all the assets of community value matters that we have been receiving, are receiving and will receive going forward. The assets of community value process was set out in law some 10-15 years ago, so it already exists. It just appears that we didn't have a policy for it. And I thought a policy would be beneficial to Rugby Brough Council because it would bring certainty to all the parties involved, and it would also bring transparency so everyone knows what's going on and how we're going to go about it. It also, with my legal hat on, lessens the risk of a judicial review should there be an unhappy party dissatisfied with the process and seek to challenge us through the courts. The policy as I presented complies with the law. In simple terms, it's a 2-stage process. There is a paper-based assessment, and then that assessment can be challenged in the form of a hearing. And going beyond that again, and going beyond the scope of this policy, if the party continues to be dissatisfied, they can go to court. But that's outside the scope of this policy. I would draw your attention to clause 11 in the policy, which talks about there's a risk of compensation if a party is dissatisfied. Now, this policy is based on best practice in my experience, and I've used policies just like this elsewhere, so I know they work in practical terms. But if members were to challenge saying, well, the wording regarding compensation is light, that's because I've followed the law, and the law is vague on quantifying what might be the compensation sought. In practical terms, if we were at that stage, and that would be months into a stage 2 hearing, the outcome one party felt was dissatisfied and they wanted to challenge us, claiming that the moratorium that had been granted on their property had caused them financial loss. To be frank, I would seek specialist legal advice on that, and that is what I have done in previous local authorities when we were in just that situation. My final remarks would be, I want to take this to Cabinet, the Cabinet being on the 3rd of March. I've already had some informal member feedback about the need to reflect names of officers and departments as I originally drafted this before Christmas, to reflect what I believe to be changes announced in the next week or so about LT. and some changing of responsibilities. But safe for that, Chair, I welcome this committee's feedback in the hope of improving it before I present it to Cabinet. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, John. Questions or comments for John?
It's helpful as a ward councillor if there's something there that we can refer people to, and it's all set out. So yeah, it seemed really good.
Okay, thank you. I don't have any further questions on this. So we're just asked to say that we've considered the policy and to refer it to Cabinet for approval. Are we happy to do that? Yep. Okay, lovely. Right. Item 12, update on standards. John, H, that's you, I think.
Yeah, it's me again. Thank you very much. As I said at the last Audit and Ethics, I'm used to bringing an update, albeit with some limited information for reasons I'm happy to expand upon, to this committee with regard to where we are with the standards complaints received at this council. Since the last Audit and Ethics Committee, I'm pleased to say that full council approved a change to the process for investigating standards complaints, and that's gone into our constitution. We also appointed and reappointed our pool of independent persons, which in effect meant I could then progress the complaints that had sat on my desk for some months when I first arrived. I had to wait to have a lawful and approved process before I could action it. And further, the council were also successful in recruiting and appointing a head of legal and a deputy monitoring officer. That's a permanent employee who I'm working very closely with and I've been very impressed with. And just as when I was a deputy monitoring officer, I've sought to get her involved in helping me, effectively my delegated authority, to progress the standards complaints that we now have. They will all be judged in my name, and I will still act as the monitoring officer, but the day-to-day work I will be assisted by the deputy monitoring officer. So already we're in a better place. We've got a system that looks like it's fit for purpose and is working well. With regard to the report that I have presented in front of you, I'm limited in what I can say on some matters, but certainly I would draw your attention that MO525, where I'd said the outcome was we received the independent person's assessment, that is being worked through at the moment. It's quite long and lengthy, and I've had to go back for clarification from the independent person on that matter, but that is something which should be moving on very shortly, and I continue to keep the complainant in regular contact. And the other matters, MO625, MO7 and 8, these are matters that myself and the Deputy Monitoring Officer are now progressing at pace. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, John. Any questions or comments for John? No further questions then on this one. Okay, lovely. Thanks, John. Are we asked to note this? Yeah. So we're happy to say we've noted that. Okay, thanks very much. Right, so we're now on to item 13, a motion to exclude the public. Hello, everybody. Under section 100A, 4 of the Local Government Act 1972, we need to resolve that the public be excluded from the meeting for the following items on the grounds that they involve a likely disclosure of information defined in paragraphs 1, 2 and 3 of Schedule 12A of the Act. So can we resolve to do that, please? Yeah, okay, great.